cockpit, bucket seats, sporty steering wheel, 5-dial instrument cluster are standard.
Recall a time when automobiles were crafted more from metal than from microchips, and style often overshadowed safety. From hood ornaments that could impale to seat belts that clung to the neck, these artifacts once roamed our streets, leaving behind a legacy of both peril and progress. What prompted car companies to test out neck-hugging seatbelts, and what became of those intimidating hood ornaments? Come along for a nostalgic journey as we explore 13 hazardous old car features that have vanished from our vehicles. Number 1. Water balloon bumpers. Water balloon bumpers, an unusual safety concept, made a splash in the automotive world in the middle of the 20th century. In an effort to improve crash protection, car makers chose to fill vehicle bumpers with water. The principle was straightforward. Upon impact, the water-filled bumpers would absorb the energy, softening the collision and shielding the occupants. Sometime in the 1950s, these aquatic bumpers started showing up on certain vehicles. The idea held promise, particularly with the growing worries about automotive safety. The public responded with a blend of fascination and doubt. Picture a car driving by with what appeared to be huge water balloons fastened to its front and back. Several manufacturers, such as Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors, tried out this new idea. Motorists were left to wonder if these water-filled bumpers were the future of road safety. In spite of the good intentions, water balloon bumpers came with major disadvantages. The rubber or plastic they were made from wasn't always durable. In actual accidents, they frequently burst, spilling water and leaving the vehicle unprotected. Although water does absorb energy, it was no match for the protective power of modern innovations like crumple zones. During high-speed impacts, water-filled bumpers just didn't offer enough protection. As crash safety science progressed, it became obvious that these bumpers were more of a novelty than a genuine safety feature. By the 1970s, they had mostly vanished from new vehicle models. Automakers turned their attention to more effectively engineered safety systems, abandoning the aquatic experiment. As the time of water-filled bumpers came to a close, what other bold inventions tried to redefine the driving experience? The wrist-twist swivel system calls, giving us a peek into automotive creativity. Number 2. The wrist-twist swivel system. In the 1960s, an experimental car innovation known as the wrist-twist swivel system emerged, promising to revolutionize how we drive. Ford's Mercury division put this system into its Park Lane convertibles, replacing the traditional steering wheel with a pair of rotating dials that looked like handlebars. Despite the initial curiosity, the public met it with doubt. Navigating with twistable dials felt more like a trick than a useful improvement. The system's goal was to make steering more comfortable and intuitive. It let the steering column tilt up for easy entry and then lower to lap level after the driver was seated, with armrests on either side for support. Additionally, it provided a clear view of the instrument panel, as there was no wheel rim blocking the line of sight. Nevertheless, a few key issues led to its failure. For starters, drivers found the wrist twist system confusing. It took concentration to get used to the thumb rings and keep a relaxed grip. The system also didn't provide the kind of physical feedback needed for safe driving, which created confusion and potential dangers on the road. Safety issues were also a problem, because there was no padded rim, leaving a driver's head and knees exposed in a collision. Even with the possibility of enhancements like a telescoping column, the system was ultimately scrapped. By the 1970s, engineers acknowledged that even though the wrist-twist swivel system was a bold experiment, the classic steering wheel, the most ancient invention in car history, was still superior in terms of usability and safety. Number 3. Neck seat belts. Throughout the 1960s, automakers considered the concept of neck seat belts. The goal was to hold the head in place to stop whiplash in a crash. This theoretical idea bypassed the usual chest and lap belts, concentrating only on the fragile connection between the head and torso. It was a bold concept, picturing a seatbelt that wrapped snugly around the neck, much like a scarf. Despite the boldness of the concept, neck seatbelts never became common. They stayed in the shadows like covert safety agents. Companies such as Ford, General Motors, and others experimented with these early models, but the general public was largely unaware of this potential safety revolution. However, neck seat belts presented serious risks. While their purpose was to reduce whiplash, they brought their own dangers. Abrupt stops could cause strain and injury because the restrained head would put stress on the neck muscles. Furthermore, these prototypes lacked sufficient real-world testing, leaving many questions about whether they could save lives or might actually cause more harm. By the 1970s, neck seat belts had disappeared from the drawing board, likely considered either too advanced for their time or simply too hazardous for general use. Today, the standard is the chest and lap belt, which leaves the neck free during travel. Now, let's examine how the arrival of non-collapsible steering columns signified a groundbreaking change in car safety. Number 4. Non-collapsible steering columns. Prior to the late 1960s, cars came with non-collapsible steering columns. These were solid shafts that linked the steering wheel directly to the wheels. Even though they had been around since the very first cars, the public generally paid them no mind until accidents began to reveal just how dangerous they were. The inflexible design of these columns created a major hazard for drivers during a crash. Automakers like Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler all used these rigid columns in their cars. The main danger came from their lack of give. In an accident, the force of the collision could thrust the steering column backward, which could impale the driver and lead to serious or even fatal injuries. In contrast to today's collapsible columns, these early versions had no way to absorb energy, providing no cushion to lessen the severity of the impact. Reacting to growing safety worries, General Motors made a crucial move in 1967 when it unveiled the first collapsible steering columns. These groundbreaking designs were made to crumple during an impact, drastically lowering the risk of impalement and putting driver safety first. Soon after, other car companies did the same, signaling the end of the age of rigid steering columns as the auto industry adopted safer options. Number 5. Swing-away steering wheels. Swing-away steering wheels, a curious invention that appeared in the mid-20th century, were designed to transform driver comfort and make getting into the car more convenient. Ford introduced them in 1961, initially as an option on models like the Thunderbird. Their purpose was to provide a smooth entry, featuring a whimsical motion where the steering wheel would gracefully move aside as the driver approached, clearing a path to the seat. This novel idea sparked considerable interest among motorists as it addressed the long-standing difficulty of fitting into cars in narrow parking spots. While Ford led the charge in using swing-away steering wheels, other car makers also toyed with similar designs during that time. However, swing-away steering wheels came with substantial safety risks. Despite the initial excitement, the mechanisms controlling these devices were susceptible to mechanical problems. They would sometimes fail to lock the wheel back into its proper position after being moved, leaving drivers confused or even temporarily stuck. Furthermore, the risk of the wheel moving accidentally while driving was a major concern that compromised the safety of everyone in the car. As the 1970s neared, the appeal of swing-away steering wheels started to diminish. Safety issues eventually took priority over the convenience they provided, leading manufacturers to turn their focus to more dependable and secure designs. As a result, the time of swing-away steering wheels came to a close, representing a move toward safer and more reliable automotive features. As swing-away steering wheels disappeared, safety became paramount. But what about pop-out windshields, another innovative relic? Did they also fall victim to safety concerns? Number 6. Pop-out windshields. In the mid-20th century, a strange artifact of automotive design known as pop-out windshields came into being. In 1948, the Tucker automobile unveiled these pop-out laminated glass windshields, made by Libby Owens Ford, which were meant to act as escape routes for passengers. Using a soft rubber gasket, these windshields could be pushed out in a single piece, theoretically giving occupants a safe way out of a wrecked car. At first, drivers were fascinated by this safety innovation, imagining themselves surviving an accident and calmly popping out the windshield like opening a bottle of champagne. While other automakers paid attention, Tucker was at the forefront of popularizing this feature. However, like any new invention, it had its own set of dangers. First, in a serious collision, the abrupt ejection of the windshield could launch occupants out of the car, creating a serious risk. Instead of the glass shattering, passengers could be thrown through the very opening meant for their safety, turning them into human projectiles. Despite the early fascination, safety worries began to build. By the 1950s, panoramic curved windshields had taken over, providing better visibility without the danger of being ejected. As safety regulations advanced, the Motor Vehicle Safety Act established new rules that spelled the end for the pop-out windshield. Slowly, these once novel safety features faded into the past, leaving only memories of a quirky but ultimately flawed safety concept. Number 7. Metal dashboards. Metal dashboards, relics of a bygone automotive era, once decorated cars like stern sentinels. In the early years of motoring, dashboards were simple metal sheets that held the necessary gauges and controls. No extra frills, just business. These unforgiving dashboards were as stiff as the cars they were in. Imagine being seated behind a metal dashboard. No soft surfaces, just cold, hard steel. Drivers didn't complain much, though. They were too captivated by the wonder of motorized transportation. Companies like Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge all adopted these metallic dashboards. However, despite their initial popularity, metal dashboards were extremely dangerous. In an accident, occupants were met with a harsh reality. As unyielding as a blacksmith's anvil, the metal dashboard could turn into a deadly object. Heads, knees, and chests would collide with it with brutal force. Unlike modern cushioned dashboards, these metal versions had no safety padding whatsoever, no foam, no airbags, just bare steel. By the 1960s, safety issues had become a major focus. Engineers came to understand that metal dashboards were more of a liability than an asset. Crash tests showed the grim outcomes, so manufacturers started to add padding, vinyl coverings, and other safety elements. The plain metal dashboards vanished as the industry began to value safety over simple aesthetics. As metal dashboards gave way to safety improvements, what new protective measures awaited drivers after the time of unyielding steel? Let's look at lap seat belts. Number 8. Lap-only seat belts. In the 1960s, the auto industry rolled out lap-only seat belts, a significant milestone in vehicle safety. These early restraints, which were basically just a simple belt across the waist, were designed to keep passengers from being thrown through the windshield during a sudden stop or a crash. However, the public's reception to these new safety devices was varied. While some drivers and passengers saw them as potential lifesavers, others considered them a bothersome addition to their driving routine. Companies like Ford, Chevrolet, and others were some of the first to provide these simple lap belts in their cars. Despite their purpose, lap belts had serious flaws. They offered no protection for the upper body and head during an impact. Because they only secured the waist, this incomplete restraint system meant that passengers could still sustain severe injuries by hitting the dashboard, steering wheel, or windshield in an accident. Acknowledging these shortcomings, engineers and safety advocates pushed for better seatbelt technology. By the 1970s, safety regulations had progressed, leading to the requirement of shoulder belts. These diagonal straps offered extra protection by securing both the upper body and the lap, providing a more complete restraint in a collision. Consequently, the combination of lap and shoulder belts became the new safety standard, greatly lowering the risk of injuries and deaths in accidents. Ultimately, the introduction of these superior seatbelt systems marked the end for lap-only belts, as they were steadily replaced by more effective safety restraints. Number 9. The absence of crumple zones. In the history of automobiles, the story of crumple zones is one of progress and safety. In the early days, around the 1960s, cars were known for their strong, rigid frames, almost like medieval forts on wheels. However, they were missing the vital safety feature we now call crumple zones. These areas, developed later, were specifically designed to buckle during a crash, absorbing energy and reducing the impact on the people inside. Initially, the public was mostly unconcerned about the lack of crumple zones, as safety was a secondary thought rather than a primary one. Major car companies like Ford and Chevrolet built vehicles with solid frames, unaware of the potential danger that this lack of safety engineering created. The absence of crumple zones made vehicles incredibly vulnerable to the direct forces of a collision. Without any way to absorb the crash energy, passengers experienced the full impact, which frequently led to serious injuries like broken bones and concussions. Realizing the critical need for better safety designs, engineers led a change in design principles during the 1970s. This key period marked the introduction of deformable zones in the front, rear, and sides of cars, which were designed to sacrifice their own structure to protect human lives. By adding crumple zones to vehicle construction, the auto industry made a huge leap forward in prioritizing passenger safety and lessening the severity of injuries from accidents. Number 10. Unsafe fuel tanks. In the 1970s, the automotive world experienced a dark period with the rise of unsafe fuel tanks, best exemplified by the Ford Pinto. Originally created as a small car to compete with imports, the Pinto had a hidden, deadly defect. Its fuel tank was located behind the rear axle. Despite this design issue, drivers eagerly bought the Pinto, unaware of the serious risk that lay beneath its stylish body. However, disaster struck when rear-end collisions caused the Pinto's fuel tank to crumple like a tin can, spilling fuel and erupting into infernos that engulfed the car in a fireball. The public's innocence was lost as the harsh reality of the Pinto's danger became known. Ford, driven by a desire to cut costs, had deliberately put profits ahead of safety. This was revealed in the notorious Pinto memo, which showed the company was willing to pay out settlements for lawsuits instead of fixing the problem. The results were tragic, with 27 deaths linked to Pinto fires and countless others suffering from severe burns. Legal challenges followed, and Ford was hit with criminal charges and large civil penalties, which damaged the company's image and made the Pinto a symbol of corporate irresponsibility. As safety regulations improved and crumple zones became a standard feature, the Pinto era drew to a close by the late 1970s. As the flames of corporate negligence consumed the Pinto, could technology stop such disasters? ABS emerged, promising safer roads in the future. Number 11. No anti-lock brakes. Anti-lock brakes, or ABS, became a crucial safety development with origins dating back to the 1950s. First used in the aviation and railroad industries to stop wheels from locking up during braking, ABS technology eventually made its way into the automotive world. In 1953, Mercedes-Benz patented a system developed by Hans Scherenberg, which was the start of ABS being used in cars. The technology soon spread internationally, with American car makers like Chrysler, Ford, and GM releasing their own versions. Even Japanese companies such as Toyota and Nissan got involved, adding ABS to their vehicle lineups. Initially, the lack of ABS created serious dangers, especially the risk of wheels locking up during sudden braking. This loss of control could lead to dangerous situations, particularly on slick surfaces like icy roads. Additionally, the high initial cost of ABS technology was a barrier, making it a luxury feature mainly available on high-end cars. However, technological progress has turned ABS into a digital wonder, featuring advanced sensors and processors that improve braking accuracy. The importance of ABS was further emphasized when regulatory agencies like the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration required it, along with stability control, to be included in all passenger vehicles. Number 12. Hood ornaments. In the early 20th century, hood ornaments appeared as a way for automakers to display their brand identity. These decorative figures graced the front of cars, acting as striking embellishments that started conversations among observers. Rolls-Royce, famous for its luxury, notably unveiled the iconic Spirit of Ecstasy in the 1910s. This graceful statue, showing a lady leaning forward with her robes flowing in the wind, became a symbol of wealth. Many other companies did the same, with Packard's Goddess of Speed, Cadillac's Wreath and Crest, and Lincoln's four-pointed star, each telling their own story. Drivers saw these hood ornaments as badges of honor and expressions of style and personality. Dodge, for example, went with a more aggressive look with its charging ram ornament, which represented the toughness associated with both the Bighorn sheep and Dodge drivers. However, the appeal of these ornaments was diminished by their potential for harm. Elegant designs like wings, animals, and goddesses created a serious risk of impalement and accidents, turning them into deadly projectiles. Pedestrians faced the horrifying chance of being speared by these ornaments, which led to safety concerns and new regulations. By the 1970s, pedestrian safety had become a top priority, leading to rules that required collapsible hoods and smoother front-end designs. As a result, hood ornaments slowly disappeared from view, with many designs being made to retract into the hood to reduce danger. While a handful of brands still use their ornamental logos, most modern cars have more understated badge placements, signaling the end of an era defined by these shiny sculptures on car hoods. As hood ornaments were phased out for safety, what other forgotten safety features changed the driving experience? Let's look at the lack of headrests. Number 13, lack of headrests. In the early days of cars, headrests were uncommon, and vehicles did not have cushioned support for tired heads. It wasn't until the late 1960s that headrests became more widespread, mainly introduced to prevent whiplash injuries from rear-end collisions. At first, drivers didn't see headrests as a priority, caring more about things like horsepower and chrome trim. However, the Swedish automaker Volvo led the way in 1968 by making headrests a standard feature, which encouraged other manufacturers to do the same. The absence of headrests created significant risks. Without them, passengers were at a greater danger during rear-end crashes. They experienced a double impact. Their bodies were pushed forward while their heads snapped backward, leading to potential whiplash injuries and strain on the neck muscles and ligaments. The vulnerability of the neck was a major issue, as a collision could cause an unsupported head to whip around violently, greatly increasing the chance of injury. As safety regulations advanced through the 1970s, headrests became a required feature in automobiles. They went from being seen as simple comfort accessories to vital, life-saving equipment. Today, headrests are standard in all vehicles, where they effectively support passengers' heads to lower the risk of injury and accidents. Additionally, the forward angle of modern headrests, which aligns with the natural curve of the spine, makes them even more effective at improving passenger safety.